Alright guys, it's Jerningham here. I'm going to be showing you a video on YouTube about people getting angry in London about the same Black Lives Matter protest over George Clooney's death. So we're going to try and find something about it. This was earlier on today in the UK. I'm going to put it on now and show you if you've not seen it before. There's like loads of people. So we're going to press play.
Thousands of...
Okay, so there we go. There we go. Going to try and put this on here and show you all what's happening in the UK today, or what happened in the UK today.
Thousands of protesters now have left Hyde Park, have come down Hyde Park Corner and are heading, we think, towards the US Embassy. I'm just going to show you a shot just now. Some of them broke off to start graffitiing the wall here. We need to be careful what we show because there are some profanities written on the wall there, but you can see a man there still graffitiing on it. Another young protester going up and remonstrating with those that were graffitiing the wall, saying this is not what we do, and that the black people of London will be blamed if you cause trouble and graffiti the wall. So he went on. There are still people graffitiing the walls, and still thousands of people heading down, as I say, from Hyde Park down towards, we think, the US Embassy. We know, of course, there is a sizable protest in Parliament Square at the moment, but these protesters, on the face of it, are not heading in that direction. They appear to be heading down towards Vauxhall, which is, of course, the area where the US Embassy is situated. Before that, they had their rally in Hyde Park Corner itself, in Hyde Park. More than 5,000 people there, among them the actor John Boyega, who spoke to the crowd and showed his solidarity with them and expressed his horror at the events in Minneapolis.
We're going to try today. We are a physical representation of our support for George Floyd. Imagine this, a nation that is set up with individual families that are thriving, that are healthy, that communicate, that raise their children in love, have a better rate of becoming better human beings. And that's what we need to create.
This is clearly problematic for the police because the organisers of the main rally in Hyde Park had said that effectively what it would be is a protest there, speeches by people like John Boyega. There would be a march around the perimeter within the confines of Hyde Park, which people would then make their feelings known, and after that they would disperse, we were told, around about 4 p.m. But protest being protest, people have their own minds, and they decided to move just a few at first, but now in their thousands, across the fences in Hyde Park, onto Park Lane, blocking the two main roads at Park Lane, and now heading down in the direction of Victoria, we think, towards the US Embassy. It's possible they could do a turn into the area around Parliament Square, where there is another sizable protest. We just need to keep following them to find out exactly where they're going. But I worry for the police because, as far as they're concerned, they don't want to be heavy-handed. They've seen the pictures in the US and all of the concern that follows that. But nor are they willing, of course, for any extended period to allow significant disruption to the capital. So they'll be, I think, content to follow the crowd to see where they go and then make a calculation there at the point where the crowd comes to a halt as to whether there's more police action that needs to be taken. There will be a hope that once people have vented their anger and their concerns, that they will decide themselves that it's time to move off.
Okay, Mark, thanks very much indeed. We will let you continue to follow those protesters.
See what else we can find on it. There's protesting malarkey. So you guys can see what I'm flicking through. There's just loads of protests everywhere, especially the UK. I'm trying to find more videos.
For protesters across America, a hard-fought moment of justice.
Today, I filed an amended complaint that charges former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin with murder in the second degree for the death of George Floyd. Hennepin County Attorney Michael Freeman and I filed a complaint that charges police officer King, Lane, and Tao with aiding and abetting murder in the second degree, a felony offense.
Derek Chauvin, whose knee was on George Floyd's neck for nearly 9 minutes, now faces a more serious charge. This footage shows the role the other 3 officers played, the role that they'll now be arrested for. Their own boss, the chief of Minneapolis police, had already said their silence and failure to intervene made them complicit.
Every human being who has any humanity in them are horrified what they see on this video. The only question is, why weren't those police officers horrified? And so the family's statement to those police officers are they just as guilty for the death of George Floyd as Officer Chauvin. They all participated.
This development is what George Floyd's family was so desperate for, as his grieving son made a painful visit to the site of his father's death.
I'm here reunited with my family, trying to get justice for my father. And no man or woman should be without their fathers. And we want justice for what's going on right now.
This personal tragedy was the trigger for what's now happening across the world. In America, protests have become less violent, but the rage over police brutality against Black Americans is still burning. There's also growing anger over President Trump's handling of the crisis. His threat of military intervention in the demonstrations has been publicly defied by his own defense secretary. Donald Trump says he has done more for the Black community than any president since Abraham Lincoln. It's not a view shared by protesters. Justice will be a small victory here, but real systemic change is the ultimate prize. Amanda Walker, Sky News, Washington.
Welcome to the 359 fatalities since yesterday, and once again we're with their families in mourning. Now that the rate of transmission in the UK has fallen significantly from its peak, we need to take steps to manage the flare-ups and stop the virus from re-emerging. I want to update you on the progress we're making on 3 fronts to prevent a second wave of infections that could overwhelm the NHS. First, we've set up NHS Test and Trace in order to identify, contain and control the virus in the UK, thereby reducing its spread. As we move to the next stage of our fight against the coronavirus, we'll be able to replace national lockdowns with individual isolation and, if necessary, local action where there are outbreaks. NHS Test and Trace will be vital to controlling the spread of the virus. It's how we will be able to protect our friends and family from infection and protect our NHS. And it does this by identifying anyone who's been in close contact with someone who's tested positive, asking them to isolate for 14 days in order to avoid unknowingly infecting others. And the system clearly relies on everyone playing their part. So I want to stress again today, we need you to get a test if you have coronavirus symptoms, a high temperature, a new continuous cough, or a loss of taste or smell. There is plenty of capacity, and everyone with symptoms is eligible. Everyone with symptoms. So please order a test from nhs.uk/coronavirus as soon as you develop symptoms. And we need you to isolate yourself if a contact tracer tells you that you have been in contact with someone who's tested positive. NHS Test and Trace started operating a week ago, and already thousands of people are isolating who wouldn't have been doing so before this service was introduced. And they are thereby protecting others and reducing the spread of the virus. So while we're going to all these efforts here in the UK to control the virus, we must also ensure we don't re-import the virus from abroad. So the second action I want to update you on is the introduction of public health measures at the border. Today, the Home Secretary has brought forward the legislation needed to establish the new regime from Monday. And I want to explain the reasons for introducing these measures now. When coronavirus started to spread around the world, first from Wuhan and then from northern Italy and other areas, we introduced enhanced monitoring at the border in an attempt to stop the virus from getting a foothold in the UK. These measures applied at various different times to arrivals from China, Japan, Iran and Italy, and required people with symptoms travelling from those countries to self-isolate for 14 days. However, once community transmission was widespread within the UK, cases from abroad made up a tiny proportion of the total. At the same time, you'll remember that international travel plummeted as countries around the world went into lockdown. So as a result, measures at the border were halted because they made little difference at the time in our fight against the virus. Now that we're getting the virus under control in the UK, there is a risk that cases from abroad begin once again to make up a greater proportion of overall cases. We therefore need to take steps now to manage that risk of these imported cases triggering a second peak. So just as we're asking people already in the UK to isolate for 14 days when contacted by NHS Test and Trace, we're also asking those arriving from abroad to isolate so that they don't unknowingly spread the virus. And there will be some exceptions for a limited number of people who need to cross the border, such as those engaged directly in the fight against coronavirus or who provide essential services. And we will review how the policy is working after 3 weeks. And of course, we will explore the possibility of international travel corridors with countries that have low rates of infection, but only when the evidence shows that it is safe to do so. The third point I want to make today is we need effective international action to reduce the impact of the virus across the globe. And this is the moment really for humanity to unite in the fight against the disease. Health experts have warned that if coronavirus is left to spread in developing countries, that could lead to future waves of infection coming back and reaching the UK. While our amazing NHS has been there for everyone in this country who needs it, many developing countries have healthcare systems which are ill prepared to manage this pandemic. So, to ensure that the world's poorest countries have the support they need to slow the spread of the virus, tomorrow I will open the Global Vaccine Summit, hosted by the UK, and we'll bring together more than 50 countries and leading figures like Bill Gates to raise at least $7.4 billion for Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance. Over the next 5 years, with the UK's support as Gavi's biggest donor, this Vaccine Alliance aims to immunise a further 300 million children in the poorest countries against deadly diseases like polio, typhoid and measles, again, saving millions of lives. This support for routine immunisations will shore up poorer countries' healthcare systems to deal with coronavirus and so help to stop the global spread and, as I say, prevent a second wave of the virus reaching the UK. This virus has shown how connected we are. We're fighting an invisible enemy, and no one is safe, frankly, until we're all safe. And again, of course, this is all contingent upon each of us continuing to do our bit. And as I never tire of telling you, let us not forget the basics. Wash your hands regularly and for 20 seconds. Wash your hands. Do not gather in groups of more than 6 outside. Always observe social distancing, keeping 2 meters apart from anyone outside your household. And I want to stress one final point, which may be relevant today, is that as the weather threatens, I think, to take a turn for the worse, some of you may be tempted to move the gatherings you've been enjoying outdoors, indoors, out of the rain. I really urge you, don't do that. We relax the rules on meeting outside for a very specific reason, because the evidence shows that the risks of transmission are much lower outdoors, and the risks of passing on the virus are significantly higher indoors, which is why gatherings inside other people's homes are still prohibited. Breaking these rules now could undermine and reverse all the progress that we've made together. I've no doubt that won't happen. I think the British public will continue to show the same resolve in fighting the virus as they have throughout this outbreak. We will get through this if we stay alert, control the virus, and in doing so, save lives.
America, fractured, febrile, furious. Old wounds that have never healed. Pulled apart. In the middle of a pandemic, a country confronts the virus it's never overcome: racial division. On the streets of Minneapolis, where George Floyd's death lit this tinderbox, the protesters persisted, undeterred by a curfew, with the police strikingly hard to find.
The world is listening. There are opportunities for us to do that in a constructive manner. Unfortunately, there are also those among us who would seek to use this moment, who would seek to use his death as an excuse, as a cover, to agitate for the destruction of those same communities that have been most traumatized by George Floyd's death.
But in a society rich with inequity, there is anger at institutions everywhere, from Los Angeles to Colorado and Kentucky. In Atlanta, it was the CNN headquarters targeted. At the core of this all, though, unresolved rage at the disproportionate number of African Americans killed by police.
I'm mad as hell. I woke up wanting to see the world burn down yesterday because I'm tired of seeing black men die.
The White House was also engulfed by frustration. The president warning vicious dogs and ominous weapons would have been deployed if protesters breached the fence. Derek Chauvin, the officer who put his knee on George Floyd's neck, has now been charged with third-degree murder. But it's not enough for many. This is a nation in crisis, rattled by dysfunction, smouldering, with a leader currently unable or unwilling to soothe. Cordelia Lynch, Sky News, Washington.
Wow. London riots. Well, it was interesting.
From the trees, the gardens, the fruits, we take it to ourselves and rely on artificial things. We're not supposed to be doing something like this. We need to have a big top line something every single day. I'm trying to go away.
Try and find some more, but I don't know if there's any more there to find. I mean, that's a long video, 57 minutes, and that's a long video as well, so it's going to take me a while to do all that. Like I say, I've shown you this video here, it's 42 minutes long in London, but I may have to do this one another time because of the phone filling up with memory. So, just do little short videos. Anyway, guys, I've hoped you all enjoyed the video. Give it a like, give it a comment, share it with your friends. It shows you a bit of London riots and a bit of American riots, but I would have done more, but the phone's got a bit of memory on it. So thank you for joining me. See you in the next video. Peace.